Good evening. My name is Cece, aka Royal, and I wanted to come on live. However, it didn't seem like an option for me on this platform. I want to share a brief story with you. I have some video footage that I was interested in sharing, but felt like it would be important to do an introduction first, and I would also like help with organizing the video footage to tell the story in a way that is more cohesive. Several years ago, I was a resident of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I had an organization that did community events to help women, children, and families in the community. Um, Doing this organization actually helped me to help myself as a primarily single parent of children. I was also able to incorporate them in the programs and keep us active. Anyway, I wrote a blog, I believe it was in 2016, and it was around the concerns of mental health. I had some mental health struggles of my own that I really found over the years I could not share um, or didn't feel comfortable sharing with most people. And the times that I did, the negative feedback that I got back made me resort to being silent, because when it comes to mental health concerns, it is so complicated oftentimes to explain what it is you're going through, and it is difficult for people to understand how to help without being judgmental, jumping to conclusions, and in fact realizing that they themselves may experience struggles just in different areas. So this blog that I wrote was with regard to Kanye West. It was during the time that um, there was a lot of scrutiny, and he spent a lot of time in the media. And I generally would steer away from writing or commenting on celebrities because I've always felt Hollywood is such a complicated um, dynamic, and I didn't really agree with what I felt was often being displayed in mainstream when it comes to Hollywood. So I, for the most part, stayed away from it. This actually pulled at my heartstrings because I just felt so many people were so harsh and so critical, and a lot of things that they were describing that he was complaining about were things that I know many of us struggle with. So the thread that I kept seeing was that Kanye has snapped. Kanye has snapped. So I wrote a blog. It was not really long, but the title was Did Kanye Snap? And I talked about mental health struggles and talked about us being more compassionate, talked about the need for there to be services that are offered and people not ridiculed for reaching out for help. It is something that, especially in our community, is difficult. It is difficult to speak up when you need help. It's difficult to get help when you need help. It's difficult to let others know that you are actually receiving help without it being stigmatized. And so my heart really went out to him. While I was writing, at the end of the letter, the blog, I said the setback was going to be a comeback, his greatest comeback. And I said, Kanye West for president 2020. And when I wrote it with the feeling that it was prophetic. At the same time, I knew if I told someone that it was, that I would be ridiculed and I would be talked about, and I wasn't prepared for that battle, but I did want to state it. So I went to my brother and I showed him what I wrote. Went to my mother and showed her what I wrote. And, they just kind of laughed it off. And that was that. So I thought. Anyway, as time progressed, around 2017, I believe it was. Now, mind you, during this process in these years, so many things had taken place, but I am putting a timestamp on 2017 just because my sister, who I was really close to, started going through some mental health issues, which almost seemed like they were happening overnight. In addition, I felt like she was performing. Sometimes it didn't really seem real, and it was like, how did like, what happened to you overnight? And the things she was saying really seemed really far-fetched. She was telling me things about implants. She was talking about what I know now as AI. She was talking about robots, but a lot of what she was saying, she was also saying it was going to affect me and that I was a target. And I brushed it off as her going through difficulty and not really knowing what she was talking about. So to move forward, I continued to do my programming. I continued to, the programming, that word makes me hesitate today because we're living, honestly, a programmed lifestyle. And so when I say it now, it just sounds so different than it used to when I would say I have programs. But I offered classes to students that focused on the creative and performing arts and taught about budgeting, anti-bullying, and chasing your dreams. So I continued to do that and do the community events that brought neighborhood artists together, gave book bags and school supplies to students going back to school, free haircuts, and just was a community unity event that the community looked forward to, and so did I, yearly. So I believe it was 2018, and the mayor came to my event. It was a very nice event, and unfortunately it was the year that I was met with sexual assault. And I probably should have stated trigger warning at the beginning of this, just because I know it is such a sensitive topic. So it really sent me through a really difficult time. And in addition to that, it was around this time of year that I experienced the stress and the frustration and confusion of what happened. I absolutely blamed myself because even though I had a organization teaching about the importance of safety, I did not protect myself. I was going out and hanging out at neighborhood bar or lounge, and to be honest, several of the people that I was around I didn't really trust. And not to go in so much detail about that because I don't want to get really sidetracked. It is a very important component to what I am saying, and at the same time I want to make sure that my video is focused, because I know what I say is also a limited time that I can share. So anyway, it was really hard for me to get over what happened to me. I went and attempted to report it, actually several times, and I really struggled because I'm also the mother of two girls, and I was embarrassed. I didn't feel like I had anybody that I could share it with. I felt like because this was also a place I had been out at before, and I knew that dangerous things happen sometimes in places like that, and it wasn't the first time that I was met with abuse either. It was hard for me to follow through with pressing charges. Honestly, strangely enough, I even considered the perpetrator, one of them, home, because it was his mother's home, and I had empathy for how it may affect them. So there were so many things. And of course, one of the biggest, feeling embarrassed, ashamed, and immature. So it was 2019 when between 2018 and 2019, I had decided to really focus more on the Word, focus more on God, pray, and really spend time to get to know Him better. And so many things happened during this time where I really felt like I was getting closer to God. I felt like I was hearing Him a lot clearer and understanding more about my purpose. I also believe that there was going to be redemption regarding the way that I was assaulted, and that God had a plan, and this is what He told me. And I did not know how, but I absolutely believed. And later in 2019, God brought to my remembrance the blog that I had written about Yay, and began to show me clearer pictures of us working together. I knew it was going to be in music, art, creativity, and I knew that it was going to be about putting a stop to abuse. I didn't know exactly what capacity or how it was going to work, but I began praying about it because I am an artist. So of course I was excited, and I was like, wow, if I get to, work in a studio, also work in politics where I see a lot of laws that I feel could use some help in changing, or just some opinions of mothers that have gone through some things and really have a well-rounded opinion about some of the safety concerns that we have, some of the needs that would be helpful when it comes to family planning, when it comes to just being a mom and being confident. There are a lot of people that are against abortion. A lot of people that feel that is wrong, including me, and that doesn't mean that I haven't had an abortion, and definitely something that I still don't believe I've completely healed from, because it is something that is difficult for, I believe, most women, and even fathers who are not included in a decision sometimes, and fathers who are not able to speak up and give their opinion when they deserve that option, and when they have plans or would have the desire to be a present and active father. So I feel like having a voice that states that freedom of choice and pro-life doesn't just stop at home, or stop before birth or after birth. Pro-life should continue throughout life. We should always be proactive in making sure that we're increasing the life of families, increasing the life of children, that we are supporting growth and strength where sometimes families fall short in one way or the other. A lot of families are not made up the same. And then you also have parents that have different delays, that they may be able to take care of themselves in certain ways. However, when it comes to their children, there may be bits and pieces that they're missing, that sometimes just a note of positive inspiration, positive influence, or positive knowledge will make the world a difference. So, to my surprise, in 2020, I believe it was the end of 2020, I had a conversation on the phone with my brother, and I was like, hey, I missed it. I thought, and I still at this point had never said that I felt like it was a prophetic message, but I knew that my brother would remember what I had told him, because there are those certain things that he would tell me, like, you're weird, but in a good kind of way. Like even if he denies what I'm saying at first, he'll still deny it, but keep it in his mind. And so I was like, yeah, I missed it. I was like, Ye isn't even, honestly, I don't call him Ye, but anyway, he's not even running for president. And I believe it's too late. So I missed it. I must have got it wrong. Anyway, my brother gives me a call. I don't think it was a week later. And he's like, guess what was just announced today? So that's when he tells me that the announcement that he was running for president was made. So around this time, I started getting the nudging to pray for him. And at the time, I was praying online. I was very vocal online, talking about the different things that were going on, just communicating back and forth. But spent a lot of time in prayer groups, sharing my opinion and just communing with different people on Facebook mainly. And while I was doing that, I was writing and crying and everything else. But when I heard this, I was like, wow, okay, amazing. And I felt like the vision of what I saw was coming to pass. And I kept feeling the nudging to pray for him online. And at first, I was resisting, and to find that blog that I wrote and redo it. And I was hesitant because I didn't want to appear crazy, and I really didn't understand all that God was calling me to do. But I mentioned it to a couple people. No, I think one person, and it was just basically kind of like brushed off, and I went through a doubting phase. But then anyway, I winded up where I started praying, and I started praying nightly, and I was waking up like 4 a.m. like clockwork to pray. And if I didn't just wake up to pray, it was almost like someone was tickling my nose, I was coughing, but whatever it was, I was getting up like clockwork, and it was a really supernatural experience that was happening. And so that was what I was doing. And there were times that I would get specifics on what to pray about, and other things too. For instance, at the time, I think I was wearing a wig, and I know it was like I got up and I was trying to get my stuff together so I could go online, and I felt like I was like, no, just go now the way you are. I want you naked. And not in the sense that I didn't have any clothes on, but in the sense that I was really particular about the way I appeared online. And sometimes I looked a little special, but I would try to look kind of neat before I went online. Anyway, so I after praying and such, I began having dreams and visions, and more of Ye and I actually getting married and building a future and having children, almost like the Noah story, it was to put an end to, or help put an end to, Molly and ecstasy epidemic, and also the music, the murder music that we listen to, and provide a different type of music and a different type of image of leadership so that the next generation can grow and flourish. And what I found was I struggled with this thought because he was also married at the time. And let me also say this, I saw him for the first time at Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. He actually winded up doing a service there right after I moved from Philadelphia to Dallas, and I was determined that I was going to go because I was listening to Jesus is King, and that was like my therapy. That was my workout tape. It was like my workout CD. What better to have on a playlist that you can actually work out and praise, and it actually go hard. So that, and then there were a couple other songs that he had that went into the playlist that I would play and listen to. And so my thoughts about working with him were really always pure, in a sense of it would be a God union, that showing an African American male in leadership, and him having the leadership and the following that he has, that it was really important and impactful. So I was glad to hear and work out to the album and know that we would be working together. So anyway, when that component came, I just kind of brushed it off, and I looked at it as a negative thought, or temptation, or something like that, maybe trying to approach me. So I began to pray about it, and I was like, believing that he would be like, we'd be like brother and sister, but working together towards change. Anyway, fast forward a little bit. As time passed, I was having more dreams. I was having more visions of the same thing. And several things took place, and I've recorded and shared, and I will be sharing a lot more. But my purpose tonight is really to just share this video and hope for not just redemption, but hope for support, hope for change, and hope for help. Because after praying for him in 2020, I began a journey that seemed like a journey of war, a journey of a lot of pain and struggle. At first, it was very, the image was very promising, but at the same time, in 2021, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was diagnosed in September. A couple months prior to this, I was being encouraged to move. And the way to share this story is just so, I don't want to say difficult, but yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult that I'm on here. It's difficult that I want to be transparent. I want to be honest, and also knowing that what I'm sharing sounds really foolish, at least when I look back over the things that I've done, the things that I've said, the things that I didn't see and understand were me being manipulated. It has taken me through a lot of twists and turns to really feel embarrassed, disappointed, and ashamed. And today I say it is not my fault that I was taken advantage of. It's not my fault I've been experimented on. It's not my fault that I've been abused. And I know there are many others who have a similar story or have experienced some painful things during, especially after COVID. I really believe that COVID was a catalyst for a lot of what I went through and a lot of what I'm sure others have gone through, because I more so recently have been searching and finding that my story is not so strange, but it seems that there hasn't been a whole lot of support in making a change. It seems like those that are in authority, that those we want to call on, and those that we need to, that we look to for leadership, protection, and guidance, are the ones that are in charge. And so I moved from Dallas to Los Angeles, and really I just threw everything in. Because of the relationship I felt I built with God and the level of intimacy and communication that we were having, I trusted that when He said, I want you to go, that it was time to go. It was suggested that I get rid of everything that I owned, and because I was starting over, I was starting a new covenant, and it was just myself and my 2 children. And I think this is what makes what I'm saying the most difficult, because I don't feel as though I protected them. I had just moved to Dallas in 2019, and I made sure that I got an apartment, that I did reviews of different places, that I visited the city for a short period of time before I came. And that's a whole nother story, because I was led to move to Houston, but I decided to choose between Houston and Dallas because something that I was told previously, and when I looked at the list of best cities to move to, as a single mom who was an entrepreneur looking to grow her business, I felt there was a lot of opportunity in Dallas. And so I got up and I moved. But when I moved to Los Angeles, I did none of those things. I just kind of was on this mission, and the message that I was getting from God was that Kanye and I were going to work together. There were several things where there was interaction online, messages I was receiving on my phone, and quite honestly, this is one of the most difficult things to share. I began getting messages on my phone via text, via memes, via so many different things. And I think what I just skipped over was part of the reason I also moved to Dallas was what I was recording, what I was playing on YouTube. As I was praying, my playlist was changing based on what I was praying. And it was like the songs were answering what I was saying to God. And I do know that AI has the capability to follow certain things when you are speaking out loud. But when you are thinking those thoughts, you don't expect that a response comes as you think. And so I started noticing so many things that were answers to what I was asking basically immediately. And so I believed that what I was experiencing was supernatural. Mind you, at this time I was also watching several pastors online who are considered prophets, and when they were speaking, they were saying things like God is going to pinpoint down to the second, and He's going to do it in ways you've never experienced before, to tell you, no, go here, go do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. And so when it was happening to me, I didn't find it strange. I thought it divine and felt me the chosen child. Even before I went to visit Philadelphia the end of 2020, and I went to the to park in the airport, and I was thinking that I was just going there for a short period of time and I was coming back. But again, I was following these messages and praying and calling out to God to lead and guide me to, what he wanted me to do next. And when I went to go park, my GPS began to basically work on its own, and I went to a location that I didn't even know existed at the airport, and I parked, and it winded up being a long-term stay. I didn't expect to go there for a long term, because I had already had tickets for us to go and spend Christmas in Belize. And so I wanted to give my children a chance to see their grandma, their siblings, and that way the impact of not being around family for Christmas, I felt, would have been not so harsh. It would have been great, being as though we were going to be at an island we'd never been before. In addition to that, I was also excited because there was different opportunities to purchase land there, and that was what I wanted to find out about investing. I was finally in a position where I was working on things that I've always dreamed of, and I believed that God was going to answer those prayers, because that was what he told me. And not only was he going to answer my prayers, the message that I got was that he was saving up for me to answer all of my prayers, and that he was proud of me for pushing through. And I am going to try my hardest not to cry. I'll just be honest, I do often, and I have been trying to work on being stronger, because I do know that it is a requirement. So anyway, but I winded up going there and traveling, doing several things. I was going on these missions, going through my information that was at my mom's house, putting it in storage. It was such a strange time that I spent there, but I felt like it was supernatural training that God was allowing me to go through, and I still feel that to an extent for the purpose of what I am doing today. Now, when God showed me the vision of Kanye and I getting married, there wasn't a timeline, there wasn't an understanding of him even being aware that this was a God plan, and that's what I believed that it was. And not, I think around that time he was hanging out with other females, but he was going through divorce proceedings or whatever. And so I just really was trying to focus on God and focus on the word and not get too overly excited about that, because I didn't know what God's timeline was for it. But I did keep looking for signs that, maybe we would link up. I didn't, and I honestly thought that it would be by happenstance, like maybe at a show, maybe at an event, maybe something that I post one day, or, all these different ideas. Anyway, it led me to wanting to go to different shows that he did. And I was aware, this is the other thing, I was aware of witchcraft, and that there are people that can know what you're going to do or certain things because of witchcraft. And I'm saying this because there were several things that I would find strange, that if I thought something, maybe one of the females that were connected to him in some type of way displayed what I thought. So I would literally see a video or something like that. Or something, if it was something I wrote, like I was writing music, because I was writing music to kind of like tell my story of what I've been through, and tell my story of what God showed me and the connection, so that people would kind of know, like, I've been on this mission working on it for quite a while, even though it wasn't happening, even though from what I thought he wasn't aware or hadn't any clue. So I'm writing this music, and I wrote, one of the songs was not labeled Kanye as president, but the beginning letters, I think, of each line, that is what it spelled out. And I was, like, just thinking about Mr. President, the whole Marilyn Monroe song and stuff like that. And then the next thing you know, while Miss Kardashian was dating Pete at one of those events, well, I guess I didn't need to say that part, but while she was at one of those events, she wore the Marilyn Monroe dress. There was another thought that I had about, because I was getting another tattoo on my wrist, there's a logo that I created that initially the name of the logo, TTO, was the takeover. It was for this idea I had for sports franchise and some other things. And when I found out Kanye's middle name, I kind of connected the two and was like, oh wow, that's awesome, because my first initials are TT and then his was O. And I was going to get that tattoo done, and right before I did it, one of the young ladies got, or I don't think she actually got it, but it was in my news feed, that she got a tattoo that said yay on her wrist. And so there were so many things that were happening, but I didn't really think a whole lot of it, because I felt like when you go through a divorce, you go through changes. Dating oftentimes comes with the territory, because especially if someone is used to being in a relationship, it's difficult oftentimes to go from that to being single. And it did not mean that it was going to be something permanent, and I didn't know if I was even a thought at that time. Okay, anyway, because this conversation is going so much more about that, even though this is that played a big part in what got me to come to California. It played a big part of me throwing everything in. I threw away items that I really loved. For the first time in my life, I spent money on things that I never had and never bought for me. Now, don't get me wrong, and if you hear my children tell it, they'll talk about my shopping habits, because I did buy a lot of dresses, but I might buy like 5-10 dresses, and they're like $12, $14.99, $16.99 or something like that from Ross. And I like to get dressed, but I learned to be frugal as a single parent. You learn those things. There was a time in my life where I liked to go to, Nordstrom's and Saks and all those things. That was quite a while ago since I've actually done that. So several items I bought were that I was getting rid of were laptops, and I didn't, and computers, and what do you call it, like Louis Vuitton items that I was like, I spent a grip on. So but it was like I was also reading the Bible during this process. So there were things that I would do, and then I would come back to the Bible, and that might be like the next lesson, where it was like, this person um, threw away all this stuff, and it was like, or did this, and it was a sacrifice that this person made, this amount of items, or this, that, and the other. So I was trying to be what I thought was obedient. And honestly, I did feel I am chosen. God is really concerned about me. And this was the other thing. My biological father had passed away. And although he passed away in 2012, it wasn't until the end of 2018 that we actually started getting things together as far as my family is concerned. This is a whole nother long story. But he had some stepdaughters that had stolen all his documentation and basically told my older sister that they were going to rob us. At first said that they were going to give us everything that we had because it was their mother's dying wish that they not take advantage of us, because he had already been there with them for so many years and took care of their needs and this, that, and the other. And so there were so many components of things that I was broken about, that I felt God assuring me that he was taken care of. And the young lady, one of the stepdaughters, called my sister and was like, yeah, I know what I told you, but I'm not giving you anything. You figure it out on your own. And it winded up being that we got to the place of 2019, after going through several different turns. I was the administrator, and it was time to distribute funds. I struggled with some things because the government shut down for a while, and then just trying to get his. There were several people. He owned his own business, and the way it was closed out, it was several people that he owed money. So trying to backtrack, find bank accounts, and find any information, because I had no access to it, to put a storyline together became difficult. My father was also a serial marrier. So he, the last young lady that he was with, he wasn't actually legally married to, and that's a whole nother story. But anyway, I had decided right before this just to start distributing the funds, because the way the paperwork was written, these other children were written into it. And it was almost like I felt like God came in at the nick of time and was like, no, like, it stops with you. They're not going to take advantage of you. I have a plan for you to recover what is yours rightfully, and they will not take your inheritance. So I didn't know how it was going to work out, but after that, I made some decisions that got me in a lot of trouble. I got to California, wanted to get an apartment immediately, got approved immediately. I also want to say this, for years, and it took me a while to get to where I was, but my credit was good. My credit to debt ratio was good. There was more money in the bank that I had access to than I ever had, more that belonged to me, and I knew there was more to come than I ever had. I was finally healing. My children were in programs, and I felt like I was given a second chance to prove myself at being a good mom, because it's been difficult when you have children in different ages, different stages, and you have older children. It can be difficult when you're trying to raise your younger children, and your older children want to be secondary parents and tell you how you should parent differently, or tell your children how they should, in a sense, rebel when it comes to your rules, your guidance, and your direction. And I found myself oftentimes, not just that, I was also staying with my mom. So there were often times that I was trying to raise or tell my children different things that I expected from them. And it was like a mom wanting to discipline a mom disciplining children. So it winded up being really toxic, and I found myself trying to compensate for what was lacking, and also the absence of their father, by allowing them to do things that I wouldn't, not really knowing how to parent anymore, or being detached from it. It was like, letting them get away with a lot of stuff instead of trying to hone in on more boundaries. Anyway, I felt like I started getting a better sense of that while I was in Dallas. And coming to California, I lost all of those things. I was winded up not getting my apartment, staying in a hotel, then going out to LA. And when I got there, to Vegas, that was a whole nother scenario. And the short of it, I stayed out there a long time. Much of the time I spent in the room praying and fasting. Some of the time I spent gambling. And again, what I felt, it was by assignment, but not, and it didn't add up to me. I'm going to be the first one to say that, because that has been a negative in my family for years. And I actually would stay away and made it my business to stay away from casinos and bingos and even playing the lottery. Every once in a while, like if the lottery goes up to like $1 billion, I'm not gonna hold you, I'll get that ticket. But I was staying away, and the way I felt God leading me was in the message that He was leading me to these places that were strange. What He was asking me to do was strange, but it was because He was working on tearing down a dynasty from the inside. Some things that have been corrupt but going on for years and years that He was quite frankly tired of. And I did ask myself, like, what would make you think He would choose you? And I came to the same conclusion every time, because He loved me and He chose me. And I felt like several things that I went through growing up and going through mental health struggles, I felt like prepared me for it. Because even though I have had battles with mental health, I also know that I am not psychotic. I'm not, that there are things that I feel my mental health struggles have helped me to see and embrace differently. And that, coupled with my relationship with God, I believe saved me a lot of times, especially when it comes to the medical field. From since I was a teenager, there are certain things that I've experienced that really were life changing, and could have been worse, could have been way worse. But I wanted to just add this: a situation with my son, situation with my daughter, well, two of my sons, my daughter, situations with my own help and just denying certain services. A couple situations, my daughter with her adenoids and different things that I was encouraged that I really definitely had to do that I did not. So anyway, because I realize I do talk a lot, but the reason why I am on here and I am sharing this now is because I am really hopeful for breakthrough, for support. I really need it. I, as I said, was diagnosed with cancer. I believe that there were different herbs, and this was coupled with dreams and things that I researched, that God wanted me to walk through the surgery, through this journey, and not get surgery right away. I didn't quite understand why, but I trusted because I know what I had been through. And and also the timing, like everything was so like just like connecting the dots. And so when I went, they had explained to me that I could actually get the surgery and possibly not need chemo or radiation or anything. It just be um, removal of the tumor and it'd be over. and I didn't do it. So I stayed on this journey, and in the midst of it, I was praying and reaching out to prophets and getting messages, and I was getting those messages like, God is saying that you've been more obedient this time than you've really ever been, and you're on the right path. And even though it doesn't feel like it, you're right where He wants you, and this, that, and the other. So when I was going through all of those things together, I just knew in my heart that no matter what, I had to stay. And there was one song that I had written right before I left, Remember Me, that I knew I needed to hold on. So what I felt was the main thing was that maybe it was going to be a lot longer. I didn't think that it was going to be a whole lot more pain, because I thought that the story that He was using to help me navigate was was my life story, the different things that I experienced when it comes to disparities in the medical field, when it comes to people being unfairly over medicated, when it comes to rape, when it comes to date rape, when it comes to people slipping things in your drink and you being unaware. Also due to the fact that those, like Molly's and ecstasy, is a drug that is really not created for any scientific health need, but more so used as a date rape drug. And although many are aware, the government is aware, it still exists. So when I began to, I think after really just trying to say these things sound crazy, but in order for God to do a Noah type change, it takes Noah type faith. I said I was going to stick it out, and that was what I did. And honestly, my heart, mind, and soul kept feeling like I was defying myself, but I tried to stick it out. And there came a time where I was listening to some of Ye's music, and I started thinking to myself, I was like, because I went to the Donda show, but I winded up leaving because I didn't know what was going on. It winded up looking like a Halloween event, and so I didn't go to the actual show. I went to see it at a movie theater that it was playing at in Vegas near where I was staying at, and so after a while, I was just like, I was like, maybe this is years down the line. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I need to figure something out. But something led me to listen to his music, because I said, if God is working through us and it's similar, and I started seeing certain other things that were similar, like right before I moved, the way my apartment was set up and the way the room that he was staying in was set up, it was basically almost similar, basically empty. And so that, and several other little things that I was looking at, but I was like, if there are messages that I'm writing and I'm writing a certain way, for us to have similar type creative styles, He's probably doing something similar. And I started noticing what I thought were hidden messages in some of his music. Now, fast forward a little bit, I started communicating in like scattered notes and messages with who I believed to be him. And not just because it was on a page that said it was his page, but also because some of the like songs that would come out next, or like leaks or whatever, not just leaks, but new songs or whatever, and it made sense to me, and this is the message that I was getting. So anyway, since then I realized, and don't get me wrong, I questioned it at the time. I kept saying to myself, what will you do, if, because it's like if something that sounds too good to be true, usually it is. And I've learned, because of so many dishonest situations, not really to trust, but this time, based on everything I saw and how it was down to the second. I was like, only God, because even for someone to hack my phone and my electronics, even though I wasn't thinking that was what happened, but even for someone to do that, I figured they could know my activities, but not my thoughts. So anyway, now here we are today, and it's a whole different story, a whole different situation. But I started getting messages to listen to the music and different artists and the words they were saying, and how they were basically admitting to murder, admitting to rape, celebrating it. And I started listening to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, because I didn't listen to these artists, and it was something that I never knew it even existed. But if I fast forward to the end of last year, even earlier this year, a lot of the things that were pointed out to me and I started talking about were almost, I feel like, being used against me. And I started getting into one mental battle after the other. And so focusing on my health and my cancer became secondary. I was really like just scattered, confused, stressed, hurt, not knowing what was going on, isolated from everybody that I know, and really just lost. And I also, it was brought to my attention that someone was hacking all my services. And this is the end of last year. And I have a habit of running away from trauma. The biggest problem with that is it doesn't correct it, it doesn't expose it, and it doesn't help me to heal. I just suppress things and run away. But I also leave myself open to more danger and more struggle and trouble. And that's what has actually happened. So I saw that at the end of last year, and I remember getting, and I just remembered that this year. So that's another thing. Certain things that would happen, my memory until just recently almost feels like from time to time is almost wiped, like a clean slate. I believe that the right terminology for what was happening is mind control, mind manipulation, neural monitoring, all of those things, since I have actually been delving in and learning a little bit more about it. And this is why I'm speaking. I don't know what is to come from me speaking, but I know that I have for several months now been missing treatments. It took me so long, and that was the other thing, to get the treatment that, I needed, because things that I was requesting, the doctors were saying this is not how we treat it, so we don't want to do it. So it was easier to tell me no to treatment altogether than to say, hey, let's try it and then change. But then I also went through a phase where, just being honest, I was scared out of my mind. I didn't know what was happening to me. I realized that I was more than likely selected to be an experiment, and that I no longer really had control of my own thoughts. The truth of the matter is, I didn't know how long it was taking place. And what came crashing back was a lot of the things that my sister was telling me was happening to her, and that I was a target. Years ago, I started looking at the transition that she went through, a lot of the things that she was doing that I saw as so strange, realizing that I was repeating some of those same travels, some of those same habits I had thrown out everything. Now, when she did this and she was throwing everything out of the house, including my items, I was so upset. And I was telling her, you know, you never do that. And even if you're going to clean up, you save certain things. I threw away everything. I threw away sentimental pictures that meant so much to me. Sentimental letters and artwork, legal documents, health stuff. And I was finally really focusing on taking care of my health. And as a matter of fact, before leaving Dallas, I got eye surgery, LASIK surgery, so that I could see better, because again, some of these pastors were saying, you know, like, God is, you know, talks to you through numbers and signs, and I've always struggled with being able to see. And so I was like, I don't want to miss a message God has for me because I can't see, not realizing that I was actually walking into really bad habits and speaking in and receiving messages in codes that could be considered borderline, I guess, witchcraft. Because I will not say that God doesn't use numbers, but what I will say is that is an absolutely dangerous practice. And so, and to be able to differentiate what messages are. But even with that, when I had the LASIK surgery, they were only supposed to do one eye. They did both, and I was upset. I wanted to complain. I'm like, I can't believe this happened. And I got the assurance and the message almost like loud and clear and immediately, like, you will recover all. Like, don't worry about it. And again, like, it was my training and part of the process to call out this unfair practice, and I trusted, because God has saved me in times. I'm gonna say, like, one of the first times, well, this would be the second time. First time was with my son, my baby boy. My oldest son, where I thought I was having a miscarriage, and they said that it looked like I was having a miscarriage, and they suggested that I have, I believe it's a D&E or D&C. And later, after they were saying there was no heartbeat, and I denied having it done, and they said if I got up and left that I would possibly hemorrhage and die. Long story short, my son is alive and well, and so they, the doctors or additional doctors wound up coming in and locating a heartbeat. But the next situation to me was actually also supernatural, but on a different level. I was in a car accident. I was knocked unconscious. Although I could not speak, I was aware of everything that was going on around me, could see everything that was going on around me. And I had just gotten this outfit for work that I really liked. And they were saying, because when I crashed into this tree, I was no longer in the driver's seat, I was in the passenger seat. And the passenger seat was broke in half. So because of the level of impact of that accident, they just knew that it was possible that something was broken, and I had, because they were trying to figure out if someone else was driving and ran. So once they narrowed it down to know that, you know, it was just me, they didn't want to move me. Then once they finally moved me, they were cutting my coat off to take it off of me. And I just kept thinking, like, please do not cut my coat. And if you have to cut it where I can sew it back. Don't cut it in the wrong place, because I love this coat. It was a fox fur suede something. It was beautiful. So anyway, they cut it off and cut off my whole outfit or whatever. And I could never bring the words to say. But when I was in the hospital, and it was the University of Tennessee Hospital, and so it was a teacher-student situation, and they were explaining to me to alert the doctor that, they were explaining what was going to happen, what this ink does. They were getting ready to inject me with iodine. to do an MRI or whatever they were going to do. And I heard God kept saying, tell them no, tell them no, tell them no. So anyway, I was like, no, I don't want it. Right before I was injected with the needle, or before it went into the IV. And the doctor was like, you don't want what? So I was like, whatever that is that you're about to inject. And he was like, well, you need it. But why are you saying that? He was like, even if you heard something, you don't understand. I was like, I know that God told me not to get that. And so anyway, make a long story short, I winded up not getting it. Some years later, I actually did get iodine, and when they were going to give it to me, I was telling them no, I didn't want it. And they asked me why, and I told them why. And they said, oh, well, it's changed a whole lot since then, so you won't have the problems that you had. And me hating to seem like the difficult African-American woman trying to tell a doctor what is necessary for me, I accepted it. But moments after, I started breaking out in hives all over, even though this was a milder formula that they had come up with over the years. So there's no telling what it was or what would have happened to me had I had it back then. And so I say all of that to say that I still believe and I still trust God. But I tell you, I don't know what's going on. I've been through hell and back. I have a tumor, well, a couple of them that are very large. I've been struggling to get help. I have also dropped the ball on certain things because I have literally been gang stalked. My apartment has been entered into. I was given certain medications for pain, including morphine, another medicine that I felt God said do not take. However, during this process, the truth of the matter is I allowed them to increase my meds. And again, all feeling like almost like I'm an undercover servant on a mission to work for God. And it didn't surprise me that I was in Los Angeles because I had wanted to come here since I was a kid, and then finally just got away from the thought of moving here almost altogether until this situation. And I was like, one thing that I felt was that God would tell me when it was time. He lives in me. I just felt like he would tell me when, and I felt that's what he was saying. So I came. Those pills that were in my apartment were taken out. Papers that I had were taken out, going through. Things moved around on more than one occasion. And I was nervous, scared, feared for my life. My car has been broken into, oil drained out of my car, so many different things. I have, really feared for my life. I've watched my body go through changes that are not normal. Now I have to take more meds in order to get relief from pain. But there was a time earlier this year where I was taking medicines and it was not, my body wasn't responding to it. And I had to take more. And I was even getting these taunting messages online and stuff like that. Like just an increase of talking about pain and just different things. It was like real abuse. So many different things that I can share where my body, I felt things that were supernatural that I think are more so now a case of programming, a case of being a human puppet. And so I know that my story sounds unbelievable. I have been so hesitant, and I've struggled so much with sharing this story, other than, excuse me, telling like my sister some. No, not really my sister, because she doesn't even really remember a lot that she went through, but some of a little bit of the stuff to my daughter. And because she was affected, like there are things that she brought home that I got rid of. Not saying that I necessarily should have, but I think that my paranoia and me throwing things out um, only caused her to be more nervous. There was a time, even that's the other thing, our phones being hacked. I was letting her go to school without a phone because I didn't want a stranger watching her. But at the same time, um, now she has no phone. And so, just a lot of decisions I've been really embarrassed about making, and not feeling like a good mom, not feeling like I was doing my best. In addition to that, my son was with us. And when I tell you about this timing thing, I was believing it spiritual, because there were so many things. Like, I would get an alert, like, I need to leave before this person comes, or whatever, this happens or that happens. And I would do it, not even like with no clue that something was going to happen. And later find out like I had just missed this person, or this just happened. And so I'm like, the only person that can do that is God. Not only that, I was told about times that I was raped, and that I should talk to someone specifically about it to find out more information. And this had happened over a span of years. So it was like I never even told anybody about that. So again, I was like, divine intervention. Only God can know that. Nobody else can know that. Um, I was wrong. I believe God was working, but I am positive, and I'm positive He's still working. I'm positive there was also other interference. One of the big things that I want to mention, and before today it was so hard for me to mention, is that the reason why God connected, or one of the reasons connected Kanye and I with regard to this and this mission, is because he, as a child, was molested too. He has dealt with um, handlers in LA and being um, manipulated, mind controlled. And I believe there are a lot of things that he wasn't able to say. And I don't really know the dynamics of how me speaking up will actually benefit or help him. But I do know that one of the images that God was telling me and showing me is how important it is to have a two-parent family. How important it is to start over sometimes and break generational curses. And how one of the things that really hurt and hindered me is because I always had that viewpoint of, one husband and all the children, and you don't move on, which sometimes that's good, but that can be detrimental if it's causing more hurt than it is than it is actually helping or healing. Then you actually cause yourself problems. So again, as I said, I've seen so many mixed messages, especially within this past several months, that all I can do is put my heart really like out there on the line and pray that I get someone that helps me, because I have legal issues that have surfaced as a result, like out the wazoo, balances that I owe, monies that I should be able to recover, and also funds that I think are available to me. So I want to say that too. It's not like I'm just out here sitting and I don't have any help, but I have literally been in some ways scared for my life. and not really knowing what to do next. I've called attorneys, I've called the FBI, I called to try to block my phones and my electronics and these places that say that they're pros, but once you tell them what you're going through, they're like, oh, well, ain't nothing you can do because these people are too advanced, and whatever you put up, they will block it. Oh, that's another thing. I have purchased, I don't know how many phones, because I kept trying to figure out, I'm like, there's got to be a way around this. If you get maybe a burner phone, if you set it up this way, or don't do this or don't do that. And I've even like gone to different stores to use their computer, and the folks hacking me would let me know, like they know what I did on a computer at a store, because when I would come back, I'd leave my phone and my electronics home, not even take them out with me, come back and go on them. The stuff that I searched for at the store online would be on there, or maybe I created a different email with a different password and stuff like that, and that would be in my search, or in my feed, or on a meme or something, and it wasn't it, like I was like, I'm going to figure this out. It's got to be a way around it. There hasn't been a way around it. So I got to the point where I was saying, if this is what the world is like, I need to accept it and just be like, God, if I've got to go, and I know I haven't gotten the treatment for cancer and all of those things the way I should, because during that time, I couldn't even get out of the bed. I was just like so overwhelmed and in fear. And I, started looking at other alternatives. Anyway, I think one of the biggest things that is prevalent here and is a common thread amongst a lot of families is sexual abuse, which often starts at home. I've had my issues. Sure, Kanye has had his issues, and most of the times it comes from people that you know, love, and trust. And the goal is to teach children that no matter who it is, you have to speak up, no matter who it is, share your story. And sometimes you'll have to go outside of your parent to share your story. But we want to equip parents with the skills to address these situations when they happen. So that's another thing with my son. I went through some issues where information was shared with me with my son and daughter, and I had to also reflect on things that I went through when I was growing up, things that I saw, things that I participated in, things that affected me in my juvenile years and even older years, and addressing those things. I was also like continuously giving the message that a big part of the reason I get taken advantage of is because I don't really express myself sternly. I needed to be harsher, or whatever the case may be. And while I was talking to my children about some things, instead of really hearing both sides out and giving myself a chance to process it, my son, who was talking over me, but I also know that he has some autism spectrum type habits that I oftentimes have to redirect to get him to come back full circle. And so I was sharing some things with him, and the way I handled it, I was really upset about. But anyway, as a result, he winded up, he went for a walk. I was like, you can't talk over me, you can't disrespect me. And sometimes if he'd go for a walk, he'd come right back, respectful. But in this situation, he didn't come back. And so I was looking for him, and I don't want to go through a whole long thing. But the thing is, this year I found out a lot of these dates weren't by accident. When I started going through like what happened and how it happened, and realizing how my phone was hacked, and the ability for someone to take the time to hack all those people that you know and you communicate with, they know who's possibly going to call, who's available. It just so happened one of my son's homies from Philadelphia was visiting LA on that date and agreed to put my son on a bus from California to Philadelphia. So I, though, at the time was like, oh gosh, this is something that God is doing. And just being honest, it wound up being difficult because, for one, just the fact that his father even responded was surprising, because he really didn't know my son. You could probably count on a hand how many times he actually saw my son, even though my son was 16 years old. And that is the truth. But my son was also 16 and a half at the time, getting ready to be 17. So even though I wanted to run up there and snatch him back, and I actually left and started taking that drive, but I had no place to stay. I knew when I got there, I also didn't have the funds. And that's a whole nother story. Since I've been out here, I've wound up homeless. I've wound up going through homeless programs, sleeping in the car, going through a program to help me get an apartment where I had great credit, all type of things. So I really went through some abuse and some pain. On one hand, it offers me a little bit of relief to know that I was manipulated and controlled. On the other hand, it is difficult accepting the fact that I didn't just stay where I was and make what I feel would have been better decisions. So anyway, with all of that said, if anybody looks at this and has any suggestions, any recommendations, please reach out. Please help me out. Please respond. I want to say this too because I've been seeing it, and it's part of the reason that I am sharing this on Twitter, and I don't know if I can share the whole thing. But in addition to Kanye, another person that I've been feeling like has a personal involvement in what I've been experiencing is Mr. Elon Musk. And trust me, this is difficult to say. I don't want any backlash, but I wanted to be honest about what I feel, honest about what I've been seeing, and honest about how fearful it is. But I also feel like one of the biggest things has also been facing my fears, because what kept me out of coming to LA was fear. And I threw everything out and came here and wound up running into trouble. So finally, since I've been here, I went downtown and I went to look at a place in Hollywood to hopefully rent an office until I can get my own space, and kind of like just look it directly in the face. And I feel like the way that I am expressing what I see, I believe that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he has that direct connection and is aware of what I'm experiencing. So I don't know what is going to be the recourse after me stating this, but I really felt like I needed to. I also had 2 puppies when I got here. I have one. Part of that is my fault. Animals can be mind controlled and manipulated as well. And I went through problems back and forth about getting rid of my puppies and not doing it. I actually finally let them go. I tried to give them away several times and winded up being turned down, and I felt it was God's way of saying it's okay for me to keep them. Finally, I let them go. One of them came back. I got a contact from someone named Astrid. At least that's the name he gave the people that ship my puppies, and said that he found Coco and would give them back. I wanted my cocoa beans. He wouldn't answer the phone, though, not for me or for the company. After I started calling to make arrangements, I did get Cannonball back. And that's another thing. When I first named him Cannonball, I just always liked the name Cannon and wanted a puppy named Cannonball. And he has, I felt that, and I don't remember where I got this message, but there was some kind of connection, and possibly Ye had some type of cancer as well. And so I thought there were all these similarities that were being pointed out to me. And so when I got my second puppy, I wanted to give him a name that started with the same two first initials, CB, which a cousin of mine used to call me. But anyway, I don't think I really thought about it at first when I named him Cannonball, but I just wanted my puppy to have a last name. But anyway, it began being difficult to have them because they went through these stages, and I didn't even realize there was a period of time this year where my dog didn't even bark at all. Noises outside, nothing. And I didn't really notice it until he started barking again. But there are just different things. They would see just, I guess, spirits or images, something in the room, and start barking at it and just acting really weird at different times, and running around certain ways, just things that were really kind of tormenting. And I realized that my view of what I thought was witchcraft was not exactly right. It was, but there's so much more to that, because I really believed as long as you don't get involved in all of these things that they classify as witchcrafts and seances, and you're not praying to the enemy and all of these things, that you're covered. And so much more that I even have to learn, so much more that I don't know. But I'm going to wrap it up here because I've been talking for about an hour and a half. But like I said, this is my plea for help, because even the attorneys that I've called, they're like, oh, this type of stuff happens all the time. But it's one of the hardest things to prove. With the different issues that I have that I'm trying to resolve, including the situation with my ex, because I did file papers and I wanted to go back. I've gone to court regarding him not helping with child support over the years and making good money, driving around in Benzes and owning motorcycles and being an over-the-road truck driver while giving me $350 a month for 5 children while I'm on a fixed income, and me taking paperwork into the court, letting them know that he's lying about his income, and them not accepting it. Like, at first they actually sent him, that's a whole nother story. I don't want to go into something else and veer away, but there my point is, there are so many things that I've been trying to clear up, that just trying to get different attorneys who can help me. I have strings untied in Georgia, Philadelphia, Delaware, Dallas. I have funds that are owed to me in some of these same places, and have been really overwhelmed, but I'm tired of being stuck. And I feel like not saying nothing is sure to get me no help. Saying something and just bleeding my true heart, I pray for support, and I pray for healing, and I pray for supernatural healing. But that's another thing. Even when I was working out, like, it's interesting how sometimes the pain shifts or whatever. I've had bouts with sciatica, not since I've been going through this, but the cancer pain has been different. And I feel like sometimes when I am not, I guess, quote unquote, producing or being obedient, the pain has been intensified. I am literally like, I'm thinking almost along the lines of an acupuncture doll. But unless people actually speak up, and enough of us do to make a change, we're going to be stuck. I have also not wanted to tell, because what I was trying to do is develop and share my organization to help champions of abuse, champions who've gone through the unthinkable and are still fighting to survive, those that are homeless, those who have these stories that seem so strange to them that they don't think they have anybody they can tell, those with stories that they feel sound so chaotic and so outlandish that, like, how could I do this, where they're still blaming themselves. I just want you to know, like, you are not alone. And that's why it's been so hard for me to say these things, because I know that a lot of what I'm saying sounds like I should have known better. And I thought I did, but I didn't. But my prayer is to prevent others from making similar mistakes. My prayer is also to open the door so I don't look as crazy as I have recently to my family and to others, and just unstable, and that the conversation can get going. My goal was to by now have a safe haven to help those in need, and so many other things going. And I've been really fighting to, well, after overcoming a lot of my weak moments, and like even right now, I decided I wasn't going to come on here looking like I've been looking for quite a while, and I try to do a little bit better to get this message out tonight. Anyway, please feel free to share, comment, ask any questions that you want, because when I come on live again, as I share, I am going to answer questions that are asked, because I know what I just said was a whole mouthful. I know that when you're implicating people, and especially saying names, when you have a lot of people that are like, I'm experiencing this, but I don't know who or what, it's like, what gives you the right to label someone? And so I do know the decision that I made today. I do know I don't know what is to come, but I also know that God is in charge ultimately, and even in the midst of my mistakes, I believe that He's covering me, and I believe His promise. I believe that He said to me that He's here for me. So that's where my faith is. Anyway, until next time, my name is Royal. Oh, and I do want to say this real quick. I've struggled with calling myself Royal, even though I felt like it's the name that God ordained for me. And when I started hearing it, I began using it. And after these situations, especially more recently, I was like, there's no way that I deserve to refer to myself as that. But I went back to about 2013, which lets me know it probably started in 2011 when I created the Royal Experience. And it started off with a princess experience and went to Winter Princess Invites Prince Charming. And it wound up being such an awesome event, so I kept it that way, with boys and girls, and it was a very interactive event that all participants enjoyed, including the parents. So, in some of the events, the parents would be there for the whole event. Some of my events, they would leave and it would just be the children, but we had some options. Um, anyway, so I'm going to stick to it. Royal, I've been through some things that I feel earns me the right to call God my Father and believe that He is going to rescue me because I can't do it alone. Anyway, until next time, may you be blessed. And again, feel free to comment. Good night.